Now, I'm going to share in a moment a few of these sort of techniques. And when you're first starting out, most people need some things to just sharpen their ability. And I want to go through over the next half hour or so, and then we'll take a break, sort of the atmospherics of this first, and then a few little techniques. When I say the atmospherics, it's an attitudinal. First, there's this positive affirmation. But it's very important to understand that, say you're in a deep meditative state, and you're going into quiet meditation so that you can then be in an expanded state of mind to remote view a place or an object or an ET craft. The mistake most people make is letting the intellect jump in and force it, again, this problem with forced things, instead of letting it unfold. I have found that if you're in a very deep, relaxed state, or even taking a nap, but you just gently intend, as you're going in and out of the dream state or sleep state, or in and out of the quiet meditative state, to know something. It's an intending. And then just relax and let it flow into you. And get yourself out of the way. You see, get your intellect and ego out of the way. It'll pop in like that. In the last week, I've had amazing things pop in that I've been sharing with my film and technology team. And that's really how it happens. And this is a really critical part of this holistic technique for remote viewing. I don't particularly recommend the ones that have been military-based, the so-called, that's scientific remote SRV, and it's all these things. I like the approach where you develop the understanding and experience of deep consciousness, understand that that consciousness is omnipresent, and that at a quiet level of the mind, when you're deeply quiet, you can enter into this field of consciousness that's just this side of the absolute unbounded field into the relative expression of forms and archetypes, something called 𝗬𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏, a level where all things can be known. Now, the great being knows all things at all times, and a very enlightened person may know 1,000 things at one time through consciousness. But each of us can get in that state and know 1 or 2 or 10 or 5 things at a time, whatever it is. Does this make sense? And 𝗬𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏 is actually a level or a structure within the architecture of consciousness and non-locality where everything can be known, past, present, future. And that's why, and by the way, because it's embedded within the structure of the consciousness field, it's in every one of you. You don't have to go anywhere. Where is this book of all knowledge? I said, read thyself, know thyself. It's all within you. But you need to understand the techniques. Hi. The magnetometer chattering, interesting. You want to be able to experience that state of consciousness and then relax into it and let it flow through you, and then the answer will be there. The answer will just come. Now, there are many ways to do it. The meditative state, and then going deep, and then relaxing and allowing it to be seen. That's one way. Dream time. I mentioned this before you went to bed. It was getting late. I would have gone more into this. You're asleep, but as you're going to sleep, get a journal, keep something by your bedside, and begin to affirm to yourself that you can have lucid dreaming, be awake within the dream, and you can travel to places and know things in that state. Like the Aboriginals of Australia have dream time. The Cherokee, my ancestors on my dad was half Cherokee Indian, had this in their tradition of dreaming. And many cultures do. It's only reductionist Western, relatively recent culture that has knocked that out of our paradigm. So re-own that capability, and that is a tremendously effective way to remote view. Wow. I had this set at 0, and it's, goodness. All right, and you can begin to practice that on a nightly basis, and as you do it, it'll begin to go up and up and up in accuracy. You know, I met my wife in a precognitive lucid dream. You know that, I guess. Oh, in the book Hidden Truth, Forbidden Knowledge, which is my kind of autobiography, you can get it at 𝗤𝗏𝗏𝗃𝗏𝗃𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏 dreams in a row in 1 week where it was very lucid, and I awakened into that state. And I was 22 years old. I was no more interested in being married than the man in the moon. And this woman was introduced to me by this very spiritual, enlightened being and said, "This is who we wish for you to marry." And I went, "What?" And gave me all the details about her. That she would be coming from far away, that she would be somewhat older than you, but that's not going to be a problem. I was 22, she was like maybe 30 or something. And very detailed. And I had a friend that I turned to, I said, I've been having these dreams, it's so strange. I said, I need to look for who this person is, but I'm really not interested in really being married right now. And so about a month later, I'm in Israel up on Mount Carmel, near the caves of Carmel and all that. And suddenly, this woman walks through the gates of these beautiful gardens where the Baha'is have these shrines. They're gorgeous gardens. And it's her. Well, you don't go up to a stranger and say, "Hello, my name's Steve, and I've had this dream, and we're supposed to get married." So she just comes over to me and starts talking. And we talk for about an hour. And it's like we'd always known each other. She also practiced meditation. She was in the Peace Corps. We're in Barbados and was known as Saint M. She was such a beautiful soul, doing occupational therapy, helping rehab cerebral palsy children and stroke victims. And so that was it. I just gave her my name. We didn't exchange information. And I said a prayer. I said, "God, if this is who I'm supposed to marry, she's going to have to reach out to me. I'm never going to contact her. This is too big of a deal." So she felt so compelled, before she could even get back to the Caribbean, she was meeting her mom in London, and remembered my name, contacted the place where I was working, and sent a letter. There was no email or anything back then. This is 1978. And basically said, "Can you get this letter to Steve Greer?" And it got to me. I said, "Oh, that's it." And so I then wrote her this long epistle about what happened. And it was shocking. And so we corresponded for a year and then had a 10-day courtship in Alaska. We just wanted to go somewhere different. And decided we'd be married, and that was 37 years ago. I know. My children say you guys win the prize for being the freakiest parents. And our wedding pictures, oh boy. Anyway. Very embarrassing. Can you imagine having me as a father? How embarrassing. Or grandfather yet. I have eight grandkids. But so so I tell people, this is walking the talk here. Every important thing in my life has been the result of the lucid dream, remote viewing, meditative state, and guidance for 40, 50 years. So that's how I think you should begin to think of how your life can be guided, and your contact with the ETs can be guided, and your relationships at work and family can be guided. Very intuitive. You don't take leave of your intellect or anything else, but you add this to it, and it creates a beautiful world and a beautiful life for you. So another approach to remote viewing is doing that in that dream state. The other is when you're going to sleep, or mostly when you're waking up. You're coming out of sleep into the waking state, but you're kind of in that drowsy, half awake, half asleep state, but you're rested. At that juncture, the junction between dream and sleep and waking, when you're relaxed, intend to know something, ask to see something, ask to have a problem solved. You will be stunned at how accurate you will become in getting that information. And also, if it's something on the order of contacting the ETs, go into it and see them and invite them into that space, that deep consciousness field, and you will have contact. I will tell many people, and this sounds unbelievable, that the #1 way that genuine interstellar civilizations have had contact with humans is in the lucid dream state and in these subtle states of consciousness, either in meditation or going in and out of sleep. Why is that? It's because our defenses are down and we're open and we're able to relate to the reality of civilizations that live in a trans-dimensional universe. Now, there are other techniques. I mean, I don't know how to do this. I didn't go to this kind of tradition, but there's something called the 𝗤𝗏𝗃𝗃. And there was a man who was a Lockheed engineer, Lockheed Skunk Works, actually, who was one of our witnesses. And a lot of this gets to be rather strangely transactional. You know, one of these military guys will come to me and they'll share this, one of their accounts, and they know I want to hear that, but they're really wanting to pick my brain. And this guy had been practicing to do astral projection, where the subtle body of light travels. And the 𝗤𝗏𝗃𝗃𝗃 apparently have techniques that facilitate that. I haven't done the course. And he was practicing and practicing and practicing and trying too hard. Finally, his teacher says, look, you know how to do this and you're ready. You can just do it. Relax and just let yourself know you can do it. So he went home, laid on his bed, did whatever techniques they were being taught, and he went straight out of his body, up through the ceiling of his house, into the atmosphere, way up above the earth. You could see the house and a total out-of-body experience, and then went right into the side of an ET craft. And it was interesting because he said that he could see within it the craft. There were, I think, 4 ETs at control panels. And he said, but what was strange is that as he hit or moved into the craft, and they looked at him like, my God, why don't you watch where you're going? It was a trans-dimensional interstellar faux pas. Not rude. I didn't even knock. And no, this is an absolute true story. And he says, why is it that my astral body of light, the subtle body, could have moved the spacecraft? I said, because the spacecraft was in the Earth's atmosphere, not visible to the naked eye, shifted beyond the speed of light, quote, dematerialized in the near astral. Get it? And that's the form matter goes to at a certain resonant frequency. It goes to the resonant frequency very close to your astral body, which is what you're flying around in a lucid dream. Is this connecting some dots for folks? Yeah, some people are having aha moments. They should be now. And so this gentleman said to me, well, that explains it. I said, yes, because the density of your astral body was very similar to the density of that spacecraft when it is shifted into, and that's how you could interact with it. If it were solid and materialized, it would have been hard and it wouldn't. You'd just gone straight through the skin of it. If it had not, but because a similar resonant field, force field, energy field, will interact with one of similar. But if it's not similar, they don't interact at all. Does this make sense? This also explains how interstellar vehicles can look like they're fully materialized, but the angular momentum and spin it's not dematerialized, it's mostly in this dimension, but it can go straight through a mountain or straight through the ocean. You've heard accounts of this, right? All of you have. Well, this is normally how they operate. They can operate like this even when they're fully visible. And the reason for that is because they're just a little bit out of resonant field sync with this dimension. And so no atom touches any other atom. And it slips right through. Remember, if you were to take your entire body, and this is a scientific fact, you can look it up, and take out all the, quote, empty space, which, by the way, isn't empty. It's an energy field. But you took all the matter and collapsed the space out of it, your entire body would fit on the tip of a needle, a tip of a pin. That's a speck. That's all you are in terms of solid matter. The rest of you is something else. So that's why rishis and yogis, if they go into a state of consciousness, can alter their conscious bioelectric field and walk through that wall. I'm describing these profound cities for you. You following this? Be with me for a moment. So when an interstellar vehicle is approaching, it can be shifted completely out of 3D and not be visible with the naked eye, or partially in this dimension, or completely in this dimension, but still shifted enough that it could go straight into the earth or through a mountain and not touch a single atom or molecule of the mountain or the earth. This explains thousands, hundreds of thousands of sightings and phenomena that people can't figure out. We understand how it works, now you do. So when you're out under the stars or even out under at daytime and you see some unusual thing like this happen, now you understand how it happened. Things that look like magic. Magic is only something that hasn't been explained yet and understood yet. And don't forget, our cell phones would look completely like magic to Thomas Jefferson. And in Salem, Massachusetts, you would be burned at the stake as a witch for having a flashlight, because it would all look like science, magic. These civilizations are 10 to the 6th to 10 to the 8th, hundreds of thousands to tens of millions of years, depends on the civilization, more developed than we are. So imagine where we might be in 500,000 years, because if you extrapolate the last 150 years and go forward without suppression of technology, where might we be? We will be in a society where the primary sciences are centered in consciousness and thought that then extends into these other dimensions in 3D space-time. That's where we're headed. And we're the pioneer group to establish that on Earth. That's what all of you are doing. All of you are doing that. So this Lockheed guy was going, wow, now it makes sense. I never understood why that spacecraft moved when I hit it, because I know I was in my subtle astral body. But here he was a Lockheed engineer. He didn't understand the physics, because it's highly compartmented at Lockheed. So I actually helped teach this to people. It's a physicist and scientist who actually work in these SCIFs. SCIF, Secure Communication Intelligence Facility. And some of the most brilliant engineers I know who work on these projects don't know this information. They don't know the conscious and transdimensional underpinnings of what they're doing in their lab. Yeah, it is, and that's why they often kill people accidentally. They don't understand what they're doing. This is why, this new energy effort, I really need to be the chief technologist and scientist as well as strategist for it, because I'm not trying to blow my own whistle here, but there are very few people who are in the public and who live to tell the tale who have this granular level of what the technology is. So, hopefully I can help advise these groups, these billion-dollar funds that are moving into developing free energy, because they're most likely going to fail because they don't really understand what they're dealing with yet. Either who their adversaries are or even what the sciences really are about at the level of this granular, conscious, transdimensional technology. And when you're going to do remote viewing, do the remote viewing understanding that all of these dimensions I'm talking about are in each of you all the time. Right now it's operative. So you can walk and chew gum. So I tell people when we're out in the stars for a week, we can walk and chew gum. So why can't we have our eyes open? And on channel 1 isn't our eyes, our material eyes. Our channel 1 is our mind. And our mind is processing and seeing. Our consciousness is sensing. Let's go deep into channel 1 even with our eyes open. And then on channel 2 might be our eyes, and channel 3 might be our astral body sensing, and channel 4. So we can have a multi-channel operation, multi-dimensional perceptual ability that we develop. And the way you develop it is becoming adept in the science of consciousness, deep meditation, practice, and these remote viewing techniques. Is this helpful or confusing? Is it helpful? All right. Good. So that's what I wanted to share in this first section. Now I want to just do a quick couple of exercises, and you can do this at home. The one I'm going to describe and not do because you can't do it in a crowd this big. But if you're in a group of 3 or 4 people, you know, get a box or a basket like this, and one person goes out of the room and puts any object in it. Pretend that's in there. I don't have a box up here. And the others have no idea. And then you go into a group meditation together. And you go into the group meditation using either the breathing technique or the mantra or both, or whatever fires your rockets. And let me make an editorial comment. I am completely unattached to the techniques I'm sharing with you. There are 7.2 billion people on Earth. The hub of the wheel of life is a singularity, but there are 7.2 spokes into the hub, and each of you are unique, one-of-a-kind creations, which means that something that works for her may not work for him, that may not work for her, okay? And so I'm sharing what I know can be used by a lot of people. If you have other things that work, I'm not at all offended, and I'm not at all defensive about it. You know, as George Santayana said, fanaticism consists of redoubling your effort when you've forgotten your goal. So a lot of people who are in these different organizations and spiritual organizations and trips become very chauvinistic and bombastic about what they're doing, and my God is better than your God in religion, but in spiritual organizations, my approach is better than yours. In reality, let's be honest, there's a place for all of it. Don't you love that quote from George Santayana? Fanaticism consists of redoubling your effort when you've forgotten your goal. What's the goal of this? It's to get to the hub of our quiet state of mind. And I knew a woman, a medical doctor here in LA, who was on one of our early contact teams. She got into that samadhi state playing the harp, the tones of the harp, and she played and she would absolutely get into that state of consciousness. So I am completely without judgment about that. I'm just sharing with you what I can in a weekend, which, by the way, is about a 1-year course in advanced transcendent meditation and Buddhist breathing meditation, if you're on the page with me. But you can do it any way you want, but just do it, whatever works well. So you sit in meditation. Now, here are the steps to it. Step 1. If you're going to not just do it on the fly instantly, you go into this quiet state of meditation and forget about targeting what you're remote viewing. Just stick with the process of experiencing the awake mind and do the meditation technique. And when you're in a deep, quiet state, instead of guessing what is in the box, just let your mind rest on it and ask to know what it is. You might see it. You might get the word for it. You may get an aspect of it. The key thing is to not intellectualize it or have start just guessing like some kind of parlor trick or kindergarten game. And that's what most people do. So you have to kind of be brutally honest with yourself. Am I sensing this or I'm just guessing? Now, initially, you may not know. Your mind may start pulling in all sorts of things. The other thing to understand is that, let's say I put this object in a box. It's metallic, it rings. Somebody may think I put a tambourine in there, and they're getting close. Other people, knowing that it's a spiritual tool, it's a Tibetan prayer bowl, will turn it into a crystal. That ringing, like crystalline. Other people will see the gold and think it's a gold watch. So what the mind does, here's the trick, and this is the real art and science of this. When you begin to sense something, you will begin to get something that is an accurate, objectively true remote view data point. And then the mind will start doing the monkey mind thing and leapfrog ahead of the process of just sensing and knowing what it is and filling in the blanks from your memory store. How do you distinguish and discern the difference? Practice, 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 practice. Because the more you practice it, the more you're going to realize when you're doing that and when you're not. And I will say this, if you do this often enough, this technique I just described with a box or something else where you don't know what it is, and you do it back and forth. In an hour, if you take 10 or 15 minutes each time, and there are 4 people, each person can have a turn being the person who knows and the others the people who don't know. And you do this over and over and over and over again. You'll begin to know what it feels like in your heart, in your gut, when it's an accurate perception. I call it a hit, when you get a hit that's right. And you'll know what it feels like when it was just something that your mind began to confabulate and make up. But in order to develop this remote viewing capability, you really have to practice it in an iterative over and over, but also be brutally honest with yourself. And you have to be able to target things that are objectively verifiable. Don't say, let's go target what's underneath the surface of Mars, because unless you can fly there in a spacecraft, there's no way to objectively prove what's there or not. You see what I'm saying? You need to do practical exercises, and that's one. Does that make sense? Okay, so step 1 is sit quietly, go into the meditative state. When you're deeply relaxed, then intend to know. Intend to know. And affirm that you can know because the mind is omnipresent, including wherever it is you're wanting to remote view. It's omnipresent. And then allow it to just unfold and flow through. And often it'll come in a flash. The most accurate ones, it just comes and you know. It's a knowingness. It's a knowingness. And so as you practice that, you'll get more and more accurate. And then if you find at some point you're distracted in the remote viewing process, just stop it. Don't try to remote view the object. Return to something blissful, like watching the breath or repeating the melody of the mantra and relaxing and breathing and relaxing and breathing. And then when you're centered again and quiet, then go back to intending quietly, gently to know. Does this make sense? Or lay down and just relax. After you've said, I want to know this, relax and just let yourself drift and dream, and boom, it pop in. Does that make sense? It's in that deeply relaxed, uninterfered with state of consciousness that you are most accurate at remote viewing and intuition. Okay? That's really key to this, very key. And that's hard because in the West, where everything is brute force, willpower, clobbering, and nature is to be conquered, and our minds are to be tamed, lest we have a wayward thought and masturbate or something. I mean, it's just, I'm sorry, but it's like the whole approach is ridiculous. I know I'm an outrageous person, and I apologize. We're human. Enjoy your humanity while it lasts. I always tell people who are so ascetic they loathe having a physical body. I said, well, go take a rock and kill yourself and go to another dimension. Enjoy the body, enjoy your food, enjoy sex, enjoy. Okay, anyway, I have a whole philosophy of this, which religiosity would be appalled to hear. But although I've had some great conversations about it with some of the Vatican folks, and they 100% agree, actually. Yeah, I live an interesting life. So those are the techniques. That is the technique to use. That is the central approach. Now, you can then apply it in a million ways. You can do all kinds of things. Another one that's wonderful, and this technique works very well, you go into the quiet meditative state, very deep, but before you begin, you're wanting to feel the emotion. And you have at least 3 or 4 people, 5, 10, however many it is. If there are a lot of people, you can get 2 people to be transmitters. And if it's a small group, 1 person. And this has been called, a guy at NASA actually turned me on to this about 25 years ago, 20 years ago. And it's called emotive listening. And so you sit quietly, and somebody goes out of the room with another person, if there are 2 people, or just stays in the room, and decides on an emotion that they're going to be transmitting and a scenario. For example, the joy of a baby being born, the birth of a new child. I mean, it popped to my mind because we just had a new baby. Well, I didn't, my daughter did. Although I have friends my age still having children. Oy vey. Children like for the young. So and the way you do this is that the transmitters go into this deep, quiet mind and transmit from this quiet state. And the receivers receive the emotion and the scenario. So this is actually easier than remote viewing an inanimate object because it has the emotional component. And emotions are very powerful, especially with humans, right? And so as you go in, and this then is something where instead of an inanimate object being observed in a box or remote viewed, you're going into this state, and the transmitters are equally responsible for being in a deep and expanded state and then transmitting from there the emotion and what the scenario is. And then the receivers are there to receive the feeling and also the scenario, 2 components. And the emotion helps open up the scenario. And it's amazing, when I do these experiments with groups of people, the concordance is very high. The numbers of people who will get the right emotion and the correct scenario is unbelievably high. And it's very effective, and that's much closer to what we're doing when we're communicating with interstellar extraterrestrial life forms. Does that make sense? Because we're dealing with human beings, well, not human beings, we're dealing with people who are conscious, who have emotions, and who have thought, and are showing you a scenario of where they are. They may be wanting to tell you what time they're coming and where. And so you want to receive that. All the very major 𝗖𝗍𝗄 have had precognitive lucid dream or meditation guidance to when and where a day or week or hours beforehand. So you can do this precognitively as well. But by doing this exercise with your contact team, 4, 5, 6 people, or your partner, you sharpen that ability to sense the feeling and the scenario, and you just go back and forth taking turns, one being the transmitter, the other being the receiver, one being the receiver, the other the transmitter. Does this make sense? I want to be real clear on what that technique is. And it's very powerful, and it's a great way of sharpening that skill set. So the one technique, putting something in a box. Now, there's another one. Now, if you want, we can do it together. What time is it getting to be? 3. Oh, my. Why don't we do it after the break, all right? So what we'll do is I'm going to take we'll do a Tibetan prayer bowl, and I'll take you through the breathing thing, and then we'll do a remote viewing of a place, and then we'll see how much of it you get, all right? Great. Well, let's take a break for about 20 minutes. Come back at 3:30.